What's up, guys? Doing a quick one for you today on my favorite books in my book collection. I was recently rearranging some things and 5 books stood out to me as being my favorite, so let's check them out. The first thing I have for you is an illustrated edition of the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I really like the Robert Langdon series, and I particularly like these because there are some really beautiful photographs inside them. You know, there's a lot of artwork inside the story itself, and it's really interesting as you're reading to actually see some of this come up in the text. So I'm really looking forward to collecting all 5 of the Robert Langdon novels in this series in the illustrated edition. The next one is The Vampire Armond by Anne Rice. I have this in hardback. There's nothing special about it other than the fact that this is the only hardback I have in my Vampire Chronicles collection. Of course, I want to get them all. I like the Vampire Chronicles because it's a really unusual, epic fantasy-like horror series. I think that it's brilliant, and I can't wait to get every single one of the books in hardback. Next up is my hardback edition of Stephen King's It. This is the longest book that I've ever read currently. 444,000 words. I'm actually reading a book right now that's longer called Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. But a viewer sent me this novel. A viewer actually sent me a bunch of Stephen King hardbacks. And, you know, this novel is a very special piece in the Stephen King multiverse. Many people would say it's the best novel that Stephen King has ever wrote. And I'm collecting all the Stephen King books in hardback, and this one really just stands out to me. And it's nothing special really, but I really like it nonetheless. Now this one is really nice. It's called The World of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. And it has kind of like a leather cover on it here. I got it for $1 at a library sale, which was a brilliant purchase by me. This is probably maybe the most valuable book that I have. It's just filled with beautiful illustrations on almost every page in this thing. Maybe on every single page there's a nice illustration. And I know that it fills in some of the lore for the Song of Ice and Fire series. I only read one book in this series, A Game of Thrones. Actually, I read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms as well, which is kind of like a prelude, but I'm going to be going back to that first book and reading all of these books through, and when I do, I'll be reading this. But I really like this one because of the aesthetic artwork in it. And finally, my favorite book in my collection, and this is actually by far the nicest book that I've ever owned in my life. It comes in a box here. It's called the Darwin Experience. It's a biography. You book lovers out there are going to love this. All throughout this book, there are nice illustrations, but there are inclusions in it as well. Here's a magazine from back at that time. That's a real piece of history. Of course, it's a copy of it. There are inclusions like this. Like this is paperwork that Darwin would have had at that time. And there are so many different tickets, and it's just incredible. Let me show you. Here's another one. This is some kind of paper that he was typing up, a report. Let me show you here. Here's another one. This is a personal card that he filled out there. It's actually in his handwriting. Some of it can be a little hard to read because of that, but here's some kind of, oh, actually this is the paperwork from Darwin's funeral. So I haven't actually read this yet, but I plan on reading it soon. But this thing is just filled with this kind of stuff. There are so many inclusions in this thing that this book is just a true piece of artwork in and of itself. There are journal entries and just everything else in here. Here's another. This is actually a world map that Darwin would have had. So, you know, I actually made a whole video just on this book. Check it out. It's called The Nicest Book I've Ever Owned. But this is #1 in my collection. It's my favorite book based on just the beautiful nature of it. It truly is a piece of artwork in its own right. Those are my top 5 favorite books in my book collection. Let me know which book of yours is your favorite down in the comments below. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I'll see you next time.